Growing up in the quiet suburbs, life was simple, predictable, and almost too safe. Each day blended into the next, as if the world outside had somehow forgotten about us. The houses were identical, each with its neatly trimmed lawns and white picket fences, the lives inside just as monotonous. My name is Lucretia, and I often felt like I was drowning in the ordinary. It was a suffocating existence, one where dreams seemed too grand to be grasped, especially for a girl like me. From an early age, I knew I was different. While other kids were content with the small joys of suburban life, school, sports, summer barbecues, I found myself yearning for something more, something that the small, insular world around me couldn't offer. My parents, like most others in our neighborhood, were hardworking, practical people. My mother was a nurse, and my father was an accountant. They believed in the virtues of stability and security, in having a plan for life, and sticking to it. The idea of taking risks, of chasing after something uncertain, was foreign to them. But for me, the suburbs felt like a cage. I dreamed of breaking free, of living a life filled with excitement, passion, and purpose. And that dream took the form of acting. From the moment I first watched a film, I was captivated. The world of cinema was intoxicating. The way stories were brought to life, the emotions that could be conveyed through a simple look, the way actors could make you believe in the impossible. I wanted to be a part of that magic. I wanted to step into different lives, to tell stories that would move people, to be someone more than just Lucretia from the suburbs. But the reality of that dream seemed as distant as the stars. In a place like ours, becoming an actress was not just unlikely, it was nearly impossible. The suburban dream was one of conformity, of finding a stable job, starting a family, and living out your days in peaceful predictability. The idea of pursuing a career in acting, with all its uncertainties and risks, was seen as a foolish fantasy. Whenever I mentioned it to my parents, they would smile indulgently, pat me on the head, and suggest I focus on my studies instead. You're so bright, Lucretia," my mother would say. Why not think about something more practical? Maybe law, or medicine. You could do anything you want, within reason, of course." Within reason. That was the mantra of our lives. Everything had to be within reason, within the bounds of what was considered safe and sensible. But I didn't want to live within reason. I wanted to break free of it, to chase after something bigger, something that made my heart race and my soul sing. High school was a blur of classes, homework, and extracurricular activities that never quite captured my interest. I tried to get involved in the drama club, thinking it might be a way to nurture my dream, but the productions were small, the roles limited, and the passion among the other students was lukewarm at best. They treated it like just another activity to put on their college applications, not like the lifeline I needed it to be. I found myself growing increasingly frustrated, feeling like I was going through the motions in a life that wasn't truly mine. I spent countless hours alone in my room, watching films, studying the performances of actors I admired, and dreaming of the day when I might be able to do what they did. But the more I dreamed, the more impossible it seemed. How was a girl from the suburbs, with no connections, no experience, and no clue where to even begin, supposed to make it in Hollywood? The odds were overwhelmingly against me, and every time I thought about it, I felt a wave of hopelessness wash over me. But then, something happened that changed everything. It was late one night, and I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone, trying to distract myself from the nagging thoughts of failure that had been plaguing me. I stumbled across a video of a woman talking about manifestation, about the power of the mind to create your reality. At first, I was skeptical. It sounded too good to be true, like some kind of New Age nonsense. But there was something about the way she spoke, with such conviction and confidence, that made me pause and listen. She talked about how our thoughts shape our reality, about how what we focus on expands, and how we have the power to attract what we desire into our lives through the power of intention and belief. The more I listened, the more intrigued I became. Could it really be that simple? Could I really change my life just by changing the way I thought? That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, thinking about everything she had said, about the possibility that maybe, just maybe, I had more control over my life than I realized. The next day, I started researching more about manifestation. I read books, watched more videos, and tried to understand the principles behind it. The more I learned, the more convinced I became that this was something I needed to try. At first, it felt strange, almost silly. I started small, focusing on little things in my life that I wanted to change. I practiced visualizing what I wanted, feeling as if it had already happened, and letting go of the doubts and fears that had always held me back. To my surprise, I started to notice small changes. Nothing major, but little things that made me wonder if there was something to this after all. But the real test came when I decided to apply these principles to my acting dream. I began by visualizing myself as an actress, not just in vague, general terms, but in specific, detailed scenarios. I pictured myself on set, surrounded by lights and cameras, delivering my lines with confidence and poise. I imagined walking into auditions with my head held high, knowing that I had something special to offer. I saw myself signing a contract, landing my first role, and feeling the thrill of stepping into a character's shoes. I did this every day, usually in the quiet moments before bed, when the house was still and my mind was calm. At first, it felt like just another daydream, a way to escape from the reality of my life. But the more I practiced, the more real it started to feel. I could almost taste the excitement, the nervous energy, the sense of fulfillment that came with pursuing my passion. But I knew that manifestation wasn't just about thinking, it was also about doing. I had to take action, to look for opportunities, no matter how small, to get involved in acting. I auditioned for local theater productions, took acting classes whenever I could afford them, and spent hours studying films, analyzing the performances of the actors I admired. I immersed myself in the craft, determined to learn everything I could. The opportunities were few and far between, and there were many times when I felt discouraged. The local theater scene was limited, and most of the roles I landed were small, insignificant parts in community productions. But I tried to keep my spirits up, reminding myself that every step, no matter how small, was a step closer to my dream. I kept visualizing, kept believing, and kept pushing forward, even when it felt like I was getting nowhere. Then, one day, something happened that felt like a turning point. I was at home, going through my usual routine, when the phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number, and for a moment, I hesitated to answer. But something told me to pick up, so I did. Hello, is this Lucretia? A woman's voice asked. Yes, this is Lucretia, I replied, my heart starting to race. My name is Diane, and I'm a casting director for a new film that's in pre-production. We're looking for fresh talent, and your name came up in a recommendation. I was wondering if you'd be interested in auditioning for a role. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. A casting director? A film? It felt like a dream, like something I had imagined so many times that it was hard to believe it was actually happening. I stammered out a yes, trying to keep my voice steady as we arranged a time for the audition. After I hung up the phone, I just stood there for a moment, letting it all sink in. This was it. This was the opportunity one had been manifesting, the chance to prove myself, to take that first step toward my dream. I could feel the excitement bubbling up inside me, but I also knew that I had to stay focused. This was just the beginning, and there was still a long way to go. The days leading up to the audition were a whirlwind of emotions. I felt a mix of excitement, fear, and disbelief. I spent hours preparing, going over the lines they had sent me, practicing in front of the mirror, and visualizing the audition going perfectly. But no matter how much I prepared, the nerves never quite went away. This was my chance, and I didn't want to blow it. The audition itself was a nerve-wracking experience. I arrived at the casting office, a small, unassuming building in the city, and sat in the waiting room with a dozen other hopefuls. I could feel the tension in the air, the unspoken competition between us. But I tried to stay calm, reminding myself that this was what I had been working toward. I had visualized this moment so many times, and now that it was here, I knew I had to give it everything I had. When my name was called, I took a deep breath and walked into the audition room. The casting director, Diane, was there, along with a few other people who were involved in the production. They greeted me warmly, but I could sense their critical eyes, their scrutiny as I stood before them. The scene they asked me to perform was emotional, a moment of vulnerability for the character. I had prepared for this, rehearsing the lines over and over in my head, but as I began to speak, I could feel the nerves creeping in. My voice trembled slightly, and I had to fight to keep my composure. But then, something shifted. As I continued the scene, I felt a sense of calm wash over me, as if I was no longer in that small audition room but fully immersed in the character's world. The words flowed more naturally, and I found myself losing track of time, completely absorbed in the performance. When I finished, there was a brief silence. I glanced at the casting director, trying to read her expression. She nodded slightly, a small smile on her lips, but it was hard to tell what she was thinking. Thank you, Lucretia," as she said, her voice warm but non-committal. "I will be in touch." I left the audition room feeling a mix of emotions. Relief that it was over, pride in how I had performed, but also uncertainty. I had done my best, but now it was out of my hands. All I could do was wait and hope that my manifestation efforts would continue to guide me. The days that followed were some of the longest of my life. Every time the phone rang, my heart would leap, hoping it was the call I had been waiting for. I tried to stay busy, to keep my mind off the audition, but it was impossible not to think about it. I replayed the scene over and over in my head, analyzing every detail, wondering if I could have done something differently. Then, finally, the call came. I was at home, sitting in the kitchen with my mom, when the phone rang. I recognized the number immediately, and my heart started to pound in my chest. I excused myself and ran to my room to answer. Hello, is this Lucretia?" Diane's voice was on the other end of the line. Yes, this is Lucretia," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm calling with some good news," as she said, and I felt my breath catch in my throat. "We'd like to offer you the role. You were fantastic in the audition, and we think you'll be a perfect fit for the character." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had gotten the part. The dream I had been manifesting for so long was finally becoming a reality. I thanked her profusely, trying to keep my emotions in check as we discussed the details. When I hung up the phone, I just stood there for a moment, letting it all sink in. This was it. This was the beginning of everything I had ever wanted. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. I met with the director, the other cast members, and the crew. We went over the script, discussed the character, and started rehearsing. It was everything I had ever dreamed of and more. Being on set, surrounded by the energy and excitement of the production, felt like stepping into another world. It was hard work, but it didn't feel like work at all. It felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, I continued to use the principles of manifestation to guide me. I visualized every scene, every moment on set, and every opportunity that came my way. And with each step forward, I felt my confidence growing, my belief in myself solidifying. The more I believed in my dream, the more it seemed to believe in me. The film wrapped, and the post-production process began. It was strange not being on set every day, but I knew that this was just the beginning. I had proven to myself that I could do this, that I could manifest my dreams into reality, and I was ready for whatever came next. When the film was finally released, I was a bundle of nerves and excitement. I watched it with my family, who had been supportive but still somewhat cautious about my new career. As the credits rolled and my name appeared on the screen, I felt a surge of pride and emotion. This was real. I had done it. I had manifested my dream, and it was only the beginning. The film received positive reviews, and I started getting more calls for auditions, more opportunities to build my career. But no matter how far I went, I never forgot the lessons I had learned along the way. Manifestation wasn't just a tool for achieving my dreams. It was a way of life, a way of thinking and believing that had the power to change everything. And as I looked back on the journey, I realized that the most important thing I had manifested wasn't just a career in acting. It was a belief in myself, a confidence that no matter what challenges came my way, I had the power to overcome them, to shape my own reality, and to create the life I had always dreamed of. That was the true magic of manifestation, and it was a gift I would carry with me for the rest of my life.